All right, coming to you a day early because, well, naturally. Why wouldn't we? Because the national championship is tomorrow. Y'all don't want to be watching us during the national championship. You all want to be watching the national championship. I don't want to be watching us during the national championship, so we did it today. I'm joined so far by Drew England. Drew, how are you doing this afternoon?
Doing well, man. Excited for this game. It'll be interesting to see what we get tomorrow night. It's kind of not an unusual matchup, but I mean, yeah, an unusual matchup.
It is an unusual matchup, no doubt about it. And I already know we're going to have Georgia fans come in here later that will watch this before tomorrow. So we did an in-depth breakdown right before we hopped on Drew's channel with an Ohio State fan who is just a little bit salty about the loss. Not really. Zach, great guy, great
Yeah,
analysis on the loss. But Georgia fans, absolutely go over. Drew, let them know where they can find that video. It's one the people need to watch. You get some great
yeah,
perspective from an Ohio State fan about how
absolutely.
TCU may carve out some paths to victory. We'll see.
Yeah, no doubt. The Under Official Review podcast, me, myself, Zach Merrill, who is an Ohio State Buckeye. We co-host. We talk all things college football. You can find us on our YouTube channel. We do live streams, content, stuff like that. The Under Official Review. Just search us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And we talk all things college football. We also had PG from the PG show. He was on with us. He does some great content, so you guys go over and check out a lot of his videos. He does some great stuff with all the Colorado noise and smoke that's coming and everything like that. So we all four just kind of talked about this game, and it was some takes and some things that were some eye opening, and it'll be an interesting one for sure.
No doubt. And look, one of the things we talked about when we were talking about this game is whenever people want to talk about parity in college football, and guys, this is parity in college football. You look at it, Georgia, yes, they were there last year. Sure, Michigan was there last year. But if you look at how we got here, I mean, college football this year was more exciting. Drew, what was a year that you thought was more exciting than this one?
Mm. I mean, as far as like the parody, like you mentioned, stuff like that, I don't think there's been one more exciting. I go back probably the most exciting that I think I've been, and oddly enough, it was two teams that I don't really like now. Never really liked Texas, but the 2006 Rose Bowl, Texas and USC,
Oh, it
an
was classic.
incredible national championship game. That was when I was in high school, stuff like that. And I couldn't, obviously Georgia, Oklahoma, that classic Rose Bowl a few years ago, stuff like that. But as far as from beginning to end in the college football season, I don't think I've seen too many seasons that were as wild and unpredictable and just kind of jaw dropping, if you will, than what we had this last season. And it culminates, with tomorrow night's game between Georgia. We all probably could have guessed, oh yeah, Georgia's in the national championship, no doubt. But then you have a team like TCU, and you're like, wait a minute, what are they doing here? So it's interesting because you've had the Georgia, who's on a 16 game winning streak or whatever it is, 15 game winning streak, because Bama's was their only loss in the SEC championship last year. They haven't lost since, so they're the top dog, no pun intended. Actually, pun intended, but
Yeah,
um,
let's
yeah.
intend that one. It's too
And
good.
so defending national champs, they've played the role well this year. They've had a few scares, stuff like that. Missouri, Kent State, a few other games but for the most part, they've done what Georgia has done. Typically they play hard nosed defense. They run the football. They use those tight ends so well. And Stetson Bennett has been that. I would compare him to some of the Alabama quarterbacks from a few years ago, pre Tua, with the game manager AJ McCarron type of quarterback, where you're not going to see a dude just jump off the page, but you're going to see a guy who takes care of the football, who doesn't turn it over, stuff like that. And I think a good comparison for him would be like an AJ McCarron, Coker, some of those guys who have won national championships and really Greg McElroy, some of these guys that have not really flashed you, but have just you're sitting here like, oh man, he just finished his career with one loss or two national championships or whatever the case is. And it's really interesting when you look at Stetson Bennett and even Max Duggan, because it's going to be a battle of two quarterbacks that kind of got almost the least amount of respect all year, and they've continued to push their teams, and so it'll be an interesting matchup for sure.
No doubt. Jerry, thank you for being in here joining us this evening. And Jerry, who do you think takes this game? TCU, Georgia? Let me know what you're thinking. And now let's talk stylistics in this game because coming off of the game against Ohio State, one of the one of the things you and I had talked about at length on this live stream, even Monday before the games, we were talking about how Ohio State has a recipe to test Georgia. Now, whether they can solve the test remains to be seen. We now have that answer. The answer was no, but they were right there. They
Yeah.
were right there, and they have the recipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, dogs by 17. Jerry, that's a
Well,
big margin. But you're
with
certainly
Ohio State, the answer should have been yes. They should have won that
they
game.
should have.
No doubt. I mean, but that's why Georgia is Georgia, is because when you don't take your shot and when you don't land that punch and knock them out, they're going to respond because that's who they are. And Ohio State did not take advantage of that and left the door open for the Georgia Bulldogs. And that was the
100%.
case, because they should have won that game, but shoulda doesn't win you games.
Shoulda does not win you games, and it certainly doesn't win you championships. And to beat Georgia, you got to be perfect.
Yep.
You can't leave opportunities on the field, right? This is the same. And Zach said it perfectly whenever we were in the green room talking, and we were, one of us was saying, "Oh well, if maybe one or two things would have gone Ohio State's way, y'all win." And Zach was like, "Maybe," but at the end of the day, we had the opportunities.
Yep. Well,
like
and
it
Georgia
wasn't
did not play their best game either. And that's
right.
the thing that I think frustrates, and I even think it frustrated Zach because, Georgia did not play their best game. And so
Uncharacteristic
you had
almost.
Georgia not at their best, and you still weren't able to get the job done. So
while I disagree, no name, that is witty. That is witty. I grant you that. That's funny.
When you have Georgia down, you need to step on their throat and not let them back up because they're a team that if they see a chink or if they see a light, they're going to bust that open, and they did, and they took advantage of it. And so, I mean, yeah, they're who they are, and so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of team they put out there tomorrow night. So
yeah, and TCU, in fairness, one of the things that both you and I had talked about that can give Georgia trouble is an offense that can stretch the field vertically, which we know TCU can do. I said this in your stream. I'm going to say it once again here. I don't know that TCU has the wide receiver room that Ohio State does, but who does? Right? I mean, Brian Hartline has done dumb things there, but they have a great wide receiver room. I mean, I think 95% of college football, 90% of college football would happily trade their wide receiver room, at least starting for TCU's starting. Quentin Johnson, Barber, Darius Davis. They got some dudes. Do you think TCU can pose a problem to that Georgia secondary and the way they push the ball vertically?
I think they can, but I think it's going to come down to can TCU's offensive line do what Ohio State did and kind of isolate Carter? And Carter didn't. I mean, he was almost not a factor in the game. And so, does TCU have the dudes up front to keep Max Duggan clean and have him to be able to make those vertical throws? He likes to roll out. He likes to improvise, so that can help him as well. But he's got to be able to have some time to be able to get the ball down the field, be able to get it to Quentin Johnston, and can some of these other receivers for TCU be able to step up in crucial moments? Because what I said on my show was Georgia has been here. They're the defending national champs. They've played in big games, not only this year, but last year. They even know what it's like to lose in a big game. But TCU hasn't been in this. They haven't played in a big game. And you can say that the Big 12 has parity. And yes, I'm a Big 12 fan and all that stuff, but you're not going to get, and yes, Michigan helped them, but
this is
the
different.
stage gets even bigger. You're at SoFi, you're in LA, the lights don't get any brighter. Is it going to be too big for TCU? We're about to find out. So Georgia has no problem playing in this game. And Kirby Smart, like you alluded to on my show, has had the experience as a head coach, as an assistant coach. He's won and lost these games. He knows what to expect. And so it'll be interesting to see, how Georgia comes in, what kind of adjustments they make, and then can TCU hold serve and stay in the fight.
Yeah, no doubt. And whenever we're talking about a game like this, you have got to talk about the experience each coaches have. Now, Jerry, I completely agree with you. There is there it's kind of hard to quantify how good of a job Sonny Dykes has done in year
No
one.
doubt. Absolutely.
And so you are so correct here, Jerry. And what I'm about to say is not to discredit your comment because there is no discrediting it. But whenever we're talking about the national championship specifically, you have two coaches who I think everybody in chat, both you and I would agree, have proved they're great head coaches, right?
Absolutely.
Kirby is a great head coach who's been there before, like you said, won it before, has lost it before. Which, Drew, you're a coach. I mean, I'm going to give my whole little soliloquy here. I want to pass it back to you, and then I want you to kind of tell the audience about the lessons you learned from a loss and how impactful that is for your team. But Kirby has done this as the head guy. He's done this as Nick's right hand man. All he's known is when the lights are the brightest, this is when we suffocate dudes.
Yep.
And guys, look at those Kirby Smart defenses when he was at. They would Suns in the national championship. They would demolish kids.
Yep. I think of one guy when I think of that, Reuben Foster.
Oh my God!
I was watching a clip, some clips of him, and he would go. I mean, I don't even know what you call it, but the dude was on like a rampage. It was insane.
Reuben is one of the most insane college linebackers I've seen. One of the greatest clips he has is when they opened up against USC. USC's first offensive drive, they did the halfback stretch and the running back bounced it to the left. The edge and the corner had Reuben beat on the angle, and Reuben went by both of them like a speeding missile and destroyed the running back.
Yeah.
Really impressive stuff. Yeah. Very impressive stuff. But talk to us about what you can learn from a loss. If you're Kirby Smart, you've done this at the highest levels, both as a defensive coordinator, as a head coach, and then you lose one. What do you learn from that? And obviously we have the answer. He won one last year, right? And is right back. So talk to us about that a little bit.
Yeah. When you lose a game like this, or you're in a situation where you lose any game, whether it's a national championship or whether it's a conference game or whatever the case is, it goes to show you just how hard winning is and how hard winning is at the highest level. And so I think with what he's learned, not only as a head coach, but from Nick Saban and from the time that he had at Alabama, and then even coming up through the ranks and everything like that, where, you always learn that no matter the game plan, no matter what you come in with and you think, all right, this is what we're going to attack them with, this is what we need to do defensively, here's what we have to do, special teams wise. If we get the ball, we're going to defer. If we're going to, here's this, here's that. And you come up with, and you feel like you have all the right answers and all the right things to counter with and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it's the coach and the players during that situation in the game who can respond and who can adjust in the moment. And I think that's where you've seen, over the last couple years, teams that were tested. We go back to the Ohio State game. This just a few days ago. Georgia was tested. They were pushed to the limit, but they were able to adjust based off of what Ohio State was not able to do. And I think they learned a lesson even in, going into halftime, and stuff like that. And so I think that after these losses, you go lose, you go back to the drawing board, you're frustrated, you're mad. You never want to make any decisions either the day after or, right after the game, and it's hard because I wouldn't know what to do having a press conference after losing a big game because I'd be so frustrated. I'd want to fly off the handle. I'd want to say ridiculous things. But I think these guys, the reason why they get paid the way they do is because they understand, all right, this is what we had. This is what happened. I'm going to take some time, dissect this, and figure out what we need to do next week. Or, with this game, you're going to have a whole off season to think about it. And what I think that Kirby has done in the past, even some of those losses, is it's been in these type of games where you've had the whole off season to learn and a chance to, all right, well, we were thin right there. We didn't get the job done on the offensive line or whatever the case is. And you can identify those things and try to fix it, And I think there it brings to light some areas that you thought you were strong in that maybe that you're weak in. And so I think a lot of those things get pinpointed out, and then you come back and you've seen perfect example Alabama teams of the past. They've lost a national championship. The next year they come right back, and it's we mow through our schedule and we go win a national championship because they understand the deficiencies that they had where they're small. They go in and they fix them, and they don't let those things happen. And so I think that great coaches, the reason why they get paid, the Nick Sabans, the Kirby Smarts, the Dabo Sweeney's, the guys with the multiple championships. I put Urban Meyer in that category, stuff like that. They were able to pick apart that last game because you're only as good as your last game, and they go into that next season ready to go. That's what I think the dangerous thing is about Georgia is they learned from a win this last one.
Yeah.
And so I think, oh, well, we didn't play our best and we still were able to win. That's not going to happen again.
Well, I mean, you and I were talking before we got in here. We were almost laughing about the way Nick and Kirby are whenever they might have a game where if things go a different way, because let's be honest, if one or two things go a different way, which is the game of football, right?
Yeah.
That's not unique to the Georgia-Ohio State game. That's the game of football, and that's why you have to be perfect to win. That's why Georgia came out.
Jerry, you said Urban, ... Urban has 3 national championships.
I think people are I think it's the off the field stuff that have left a bad taste in people's mouth.
Start talking strictly football.
No, 100%. I'm right there with you, man.
There's other stuff that I could talk about too if we had another episode, but
yes,
no, just strictly on the field. X's and O's guys, hard to beat. Urban Meyer.
No doubt about it. And it's interesting, man. And why I wanted to start off getting your talking points on what you learn from a loss. You want to know what makes this even more impressive is that Kirby won it last year, and they're right back in it this year after Savage helped me out because the exact number escapes me. 16 guys in the NFL drafted. 17? Was it 16 or 17? I'm off by one.
It's one of those up there, yeah.
Yeah, I'm off by one, but I'm so OCD. Savage, let me know, is it 16, 17? Point being, you lost a team, and you're right back here in the national championship.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about this, Drew, on your show. Once again, remind everyone where after we're done here, they can go catch that episode because we had an Ohio State fan on. We all talked about it. Great time.
The Under Official Review podcast. You can search it right here on YouTube. And find that video. We just did a breakdown of the national championship game and stuff like that. Really good content. If you guys go over,
ton of fun.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button, it, give us our comment, give us your predictions on who wins, and then right here too as well. We'd love to see your thoughts on who you guys have. And Savage said 15. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Is it 15? I thought it was 16. So regardless, it doesn't matter, right? I'm splitting hairs. You sent that many guys to the NFL draft, and here you are. It's wild. The last team to repeat is national championships. We talked 2011, 2012, Alabama. Guys, think of all of the incredible college football teams we have seen since then. You're talking about the Tua era with Alabama, the Mac era with Alabama, the Deshaun Watson era with Clemson, the Trevor Lawrence era with Clemson. You're talking about the Ohio State teams with Ezekiel Elliott that didn't It is so hard to repeat, let alone lose 15 guys and repeat.
Yeah,
we can say whatever we want. Georgia's done a phenomenal job.
And there's one, and there's another one I said earlier in our show was TCU is the first Big 12 team to be in the national championship since Texas in 2009. It's hard to do, man. It's it's why you appreciate winning, and that's why winning is so hard to do.
You're not wrong, Austin. It was glued to my head, and it is very hard to get it off. Yeah. Third or fourth time without a hat, so you're certainly not wrong.
That is still Ty Hayes, guys. By the way, that's no impersonator.
The man formerly known as Ty Hayes. But let's kind of break down some matchups here because Drew, I'm interested in your perspective here. TCU's 3-3-5 defense against Georgia's offense. Now, one of the things I talked about in the video I did kind of previewing this game is that one of the most impressive things of that TCU Michigan game is the success TCU's 3-3-5 had in getting Michigan's power rushing offense off of its spot. Now, Michigan was still able to score points. They were still able to get big conversions. They were still able to move the ball. But it was the fact that they had to do so in a manner that was not typical to what they did all year that made it more difficult. And I thought that was very impressive that a 3-3-5 would have that level of success against the power rush. Now, against Georgia, though, a little bit different of a ball game. Georgia doesn't have to rely on the power rush. If you take away their power rush, they will sit there like they did with Ohio State and go tit for tat with you in big plays, right?
Mm-hmm.
Darnell Washington not playing, at least that's what it looks like at this point.
Yeah, he's more of a, I think it's probably leaning 30-70 of him playing.
Okay, yeah.
So 30%. I mean, that's just what I'm hearing. I don't know. He could pull a Willis Reed and do that. I'm a baseball guy. That's back in the day. So, but yeah, there's definitely and what you added to in our live earlier on my channel was he's a contributor. He does things. Yes, he catches passes. He wreaks havoc with his matchup, but he also allows Bowers and some of those other guys to be able to be freed up and make plays out there too. So with the formations and the stuff that where they line him up creates matchup problems for.
He's also 6'7".
Yeah, and I said he's like LeBron James playing football. Like, it's ridiculous.
Did y'all see that video of him hurdling the dude?
Well, he's got like 12% body fat.
He is unreal.
Yeah.
I had that video of just straight up hurdling dude.
Yeah, with ease.
Unbelievable. Now, in Georgia's, and I pointed this out last time, you still have Oscar Delp in the event that Washington isn't able to play. Very talented tight end Oscar Delp, but Savage, I think even you would agree with me here.
Yep.
As talented as Delp is, it's tough to replicate the experience.
Yep. Well, like what he said, that to his point, Monken
has not gotten the credit he deserves this year.
He's
the offense he's put together is so balanced.
Yeah.
It is so hard to stop them. And this
baseball. I meant basketball.
Baseball.
Sorry. Willis Reed. Yes.
Yeah, we've been recording for a long time, guys. We're prone to a slip up or two here.
And Savage too in what he does in the block. Yeah.
Blocking game cannot be replicated.
He's like a Swiss Army knife.
He really is.
Really big Swiss Army knife.
Which Savage, it makes me even more infuriated that y'all are in the running for Deuce Robinson. You don't need Deuce Robinson. You don't need him. Spread the love. You don't need him. But, Drew, how is TCU's 3-3-5 going to find success against the Georgia offense that, in my opinion, is much more balanced than the Michigan offense that they were able to get off their spot, but Michigan was able to score? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think this is the same question we had going into the Michigan game was Michigan, Joe Moore award-winning offensive line. We thought, some people thought I actually picked TCU, by the way. So, but everybody thought they were just going to maul TCU up front. TCU was not going to hold up, stuff like that. But, I don't know if Georgia, is the same team as Michigan. Obviously not, with their style of play, and they've also played better competition. I think that, it's no secret week in and week out, the SEC is better than the Big Ten. I'll admit that, but it'll be interesting to see, what kind of adjustments that TCU makes to counter what they think Michigan or what they think Georgia is going to show them. So it's always a cat and mouse game, and you've got guys that have been digging into film as soon as the game was over. Yeah, could be. You never know.
Yeah,
but that's the beauty of college football is you punch and then there's a counter punch. And I said this on my show a little bit ago. Can TCU stay in the game in the first quarter? If they have a fighting chance, if they're close after the first quarter, then they've got a really good shot. The longer you let TCU hang around, the more opportunities that you give them. And Georgia wants to do what Daniel said here, snooze bowl them. That's Georgia's goal coming into this game, I believe, is to go out there and impose their will, and do that. But and can TCU continue the magic? I think that's the $1 million question. Yes, TCU is a second half team, and that's why I said, can they hang around at halftime? If they're still around, they definitely have a chance.
What makes this even tougher is that Georgia has they've been a little bit of a second half team as well at times, which is terrifying to think when we look at the success they've had, and we can sit here and be like, oh, well, sometimes they're a second half team, and you're sitting there like, really? So what's the recipe? When we figure it out, we'll let you know. But there is a recipe. There is a slight recipe. And Norwooding says Georgia 45, TCU 10. Daniel, I meant to put your comment up here a lot earlier about your score prediction, the Daniel Scott Snooze Bowl, Georgia 40, TCU 14. This is what I'm interested in, because I think this game is going to be closer than some people think. Granted, right? Yeah. Like, let me explain here. Yeah, it's going to be closer than some people think because of TCU's ability to stretch the ball vertically. Mm-hmm. Savage, we said this right before y'all played Ohio State. You remember us talking about this, that Ohio State was an interesting matchup for Georgia simply because they could test Georgia vertically. And Georgia, like Alabama, asks a lot of their cornerbacks. They tell their corners, you're going to play an NFL style of football in college. You're on islands. Yep. You're in man.
Yep.
God help you. TCU's got some great wide receivers. They can test Ohio State vertically. The biggest difference, in my opinion, Ohio State has a really talented offensive line. And I'm not trying to say TCU doesn't, but I mean from a blue chip perspective.
Yeah.
They've 4 got and 5
star, high profile, guys. Absolutely. No, yeah. And that's going to be the thing is, can Max Duggan do what CJ Stroud was able to do and get the ball out quickly and distribute it to your playmakers? And can you keep some of these guys and Georgia's going to heat you up? I think they're going to come out and they're going to try to put pressure on Max Duggan. And, obviously Miller is a factor too in the game. If they can't get a running game going, oh boy, Georgia's going to be able to pin their ears back and go after the quarterback and put Duggan in some third and longs potentially, stuff like that. So it's going to be important for Max Duggan to stay upright in this game for them to have any kind of chance of getting the ball downfield vertically.
Austin, I hear what your point is here. I definitely get it. He says Texas gave Georgia the blueprint to shut down their offense, but if things worked that laterally, then Michigan would have ran TCU. So one of the things I've always said in college football, it's not like transitive, right? Like college football isn't one of those scenarios where it's because team A beat team B. Therefore, therefore they're assuredly going to beat team C. Yeah. No, styles make fights. Now, Austin, here's where I do agree with you. Georgia's defense is a little bit different. And I do agree, Austin, schematically, I would be shocked if Kirby didn't look, but I do think it isn't that simple to just be like, oh, well, here's the blueprint, because TCU's evolved since then, right? Like you don't get to this point in the season without evolving.
Yep.
And R1 says UGA's secondary is, I don't know if it's their horrible R1, but it's this right here, man. It's this right here. You're asking a college kid to play man-on-man defense. The wide receiver knows the route. Cornerback is sitting there praying that he is able to be there for 3 seconds, 4 seconds before his pass rush gets to that quarterback.
Yep.
If it breaks down into backyard football, a corner is at such a disadvantage. So I don't think it's their horrible R1. That's not it. It's that they're asked
a lot. I'm just saying that they're asked to do what you said earlier.
Yeah,
to play an NFL style defense, and to be able to hang out there like you said. If a play breaks down and try to figure out where these receivers are going and crossers and all kinds of different other things. So I wouldn't say horrible, but I think Ohio State definitely gave you a little bit of the blueprint. But at the same time, I don't think TCU has the playmakers that Ohio State has. I think they have one, but I think they have to have some other guys show up to the party tomorrow night, and it can't just be, you know, Quentin Johnston, because if it is, they're going to bracket him. They're going to, have a safety over the top of him, and they're going to force you to throw it to other guys and beat you, especially if you don't have uh, Kendre Miller in the backfield as well. That's going to pose a problem for TCU if they become one dimensional.
R1 asks, fellas, are you UGA fans? Actually, neither of us are UGA fans. R1. Drew here is an Oklahoma fan. I myself am an Alabama Crimson Tide fan, but both of us, as much as we love our programs, probably love college football more. And so we always try and be as objective as we can.
Yeah.
I think great point here, Vids. He says Ohio State wide receiver core was just too much, and our pass rush isn't elite, so that's why they got exposed. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with this at all. If there's one way to beat Georgia, vertical, right?
Yep.
That it's the same way. And Savage, I think one of the ways I know this so well is because you look where Kirby came from. It's the same thing with Alabama, right?
Yeah.
You look at the teams that test Alabama, they're willing to test them vertically because they know it's a 50-50. You have got phenomenal corners out there, but you're being put on an island by yourself against talented wide receivers. So now, we talk about how TCU's offense can try and find success on this Georgia defense. How big is it that Barber, his status is up in the air?
Yeah, it's and there's we've talked about a couple injuries in this game, and yeah, certainly his is a factor as well because he's played solid. And you need every horse you have in the race. You need every possible advantage or experience or whatever the case is, especially for TCU. The guys that have played the most snaps are going to be the most beneficial. Certainly. Yeah, exactly. I was about to say those two guys got to be able to show up. You have to have somebody else make plays other than Quentin Johnston because Georgia, their game plan is going to be able, hey, go shut big guy down, go shut him down. They've got guys that can do it, and it was harder. You've seen it there in the end of the Ohio State game when Marvin Harrison Jr. went out. Their production went down a little bit, but C.J. Stroud, like somebody said, was able to take off with his legs and create some other problems and stuff like that. Max Duggan can do the same thing, but it's going to come down to can other guys make plays and, if Miller plays, how healthy is he going to play? Or is he just going to be a decoy? Is he going to be, somebody like you saw with, Hollywood Brown against Alabama a couple years ago? He played in the game, but he was not the Marquise Brown that Oklahoma saw all year, with the foot injury, stuff like that. So, you hope these guys can go out and play and contribute and all this stuff, but you never really know until you see them get out there and run. And then that's when these coaches are really good at scheming and saying, oh, well, he's just out there, doing this. So we've really got to, shut down so-and-so or something like that. And so TCU, I think no matter who's in the backfield, they've got to be able to have some sort of running game and to keep Georgia's defense honest. Because if they go one-dimensional, I don't think TCU's offensive line is as good as Ohio State's. And I think that you're going to see Georgia's defensive line eat and linebackers, and stuff like that, be able to get downhill, make some plays, and put Max Duggan in some very comparable situations. But at the same time, TCU, if we talk about their linebackers, some of the best in the country, winners, some of these guys can go play, and they're going to create some pressure for Stetson Bennett and company. So they have to continue to be that balanced offense that Monken has created this year for Georgia. So it's both sides really. And so, but yeah, I'm excited to see. Yeah.
So R1 asks for the guy he meant to say on the left, but for the guy on the left, are you an SEC homer? Asking me. I don't consider myself to be an SEC homer. I'm sure I've had takes where people would disagree, and they would say, Ty, you're being an SEC homer. I would argue that if I am, I have a justifiable reason or a logical reason for that take. But I mean, I think chat is probably the better indication of whether they believe I'm an SEC homer or not, because I'm probably biased.
Yeah, I would
even
say
in
you're an
answering
SEC
that.
homer. So no, you're
Yeah.
not. No, Ty is good at keeping the teeter totter continuing to go back and forth. I don't think he gets stuck on one. Obviously, his Tide has been at the top of the SEC, and then you see Georgia. But I mean, there's some good teams. It's hard to argue. Yeah. Now but yeah, that's funny.
I probably am. I mean, I might be. Yeah.
Ty, do you be honest? Do you chant SEC? Come on.
No.
Come on.
No. No, I don't. And it is.
I know a lot of Arkansas fans that do.
I think everybody's kind of at a certain point, if it's like you or you'd like to see someone from your conference wins it, just because if you're arguing with other fan bases from other conferences, you're like, oh well, the national championship came through our conference this year. But outside of that, I think TCU winning it would be the better story.
Man, would that be
football.
Cool?
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
I just don't know that it's going to happen. Like, here's the thing, and I told you this. It's Savage. I'm so sorry to say this. I would prefer TCU to win it just because they haven't won it since 1938. Sonny Dykes, what a story. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I just don't think it's going to happen. R1 says, thoughts on your guys' team. Alabama wasn't as good as their record. Couple plays from being 8-4. But R1, the flip side of that is they were also 2 plays away from being undefeated. They lost both of their two losses came on the last play of the game, and they lost 2 games by 4 points. So there's one way to look at that, is they were a few plays away from 8-4, but they were also directly 2 plays away from an undefeated season.
And the same can be said for Oklahoma. We had some very, very, with the exception of TCU and Texas, the rest of the games were really close, and we could have very easily been 9-3, 8-4. Stuff like that, but that's football. That's how it happens sometimes. The ball doesn't always bounce your way, and that's why you have to finish games. When it's why Ohio State is sitting at home right now, because they didn't finish the game against Georgia last week. That's why Georgia is the way they are. That's why Alabama in the years past have been the way they are, is because they know how to finish and win these big games. And so, yeah, that's football, man. When you have a chance to step on somebody's throat, you got to do it.
I want to get to this right here, but I also want to answer this because this is a good question. He says, for Ty, do you think UGA will surpass Bama if they continue being as dominant? If they continue this, sure. I think it will take a little bit, just because I'm the type of person that, and even let's pretend UGA does pass Bama, and we'll go 10 years down the line, right? We'll go 10 years down the line. Yeah. Even if UGA does pass Bama and we're 10 years from now, and let's say Oklahoma is making a run, they've won a national championship, they're back in it, I'm going to give the credence to Georgia because they would have done it for a decade, right? Yep. And I'll be like, oh, what OU's doing is incredible, but let's see. But to answer your question very forthright, if they continue this up, yeah, I mean, let's be very honest. Like
That'd
I said,
any team, yeah,
Bama's right there.
Like you just said about a lot of like Clemson. Clemson had a stretch there of 4 or 5 years where they were competing for a national championship. Now, the last couple of years, they have, kind of went down a little bit. But, yeah, there was 2 years where they won 2 national championships, but they didn't sustain the kind of, productivity and winning national championships seemingly every other year that Alabama and Nick Saban have done. And winning, I think he said, was it 11 straight or 12 straight years of 11 wins?
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's absurd. It's absurd.
To be at that pinnacle and that to be able to do that. And I said earlier, winning is hard. And to the level that Nick Saban and Alabama have done it. And certainly Georgia could go on that type of run, but it's got to start with winning another national championship tomorrow night, and then continuing to sustain. I mean, because that's still a big mountain to climb, even if you win back-to-back national championships. Because Alabama did it in 11 and 12, and then continued to do it a couple years after that. So
Yeah. Hey, what's up, Joshua? Glad you're tuning in. Before we transition to Ohio State, before we transition to Georgia's offense against TCU's defense, which I am very excited to talk about because there's a lot we need to digest from the game of TCU Michigan. There's a lot we need to digest and apply it to here. But I did want to get to this comment right here. Brandon's comment about group of Michigan players told Harbaugh to decide on what he is doing or they are transferring. And Drew, the funny thing about this comment is whenever we exit out of these streams, a lot of the times, whenever we're in the green room, we'll be talking football. I've made a similar comment to this in the past where I'm like, I've been so surprised at Michigan being back in the college football playoff this year after Harbaugh flirted with the NFL publicly.
Yep.
If you're Michigan, guys, I want you to put yourself in the position of a Michigan football player. You get to the college football playoff after you beat your rival. Michigan versus Ohio State, that's one of the biggest sporting events in the world. Period.
Yep. Huge.
Football, soccer, baseball, basketball, UFC, it doesn't matter. That's one of the biggest sporting events in the world. So you finally beat that team. You get to the college football playoffs. You get shellacked by Georgia. Guess what? Who didn't get shellacked by Georgia last year? Only Alabama. That's it. And that Alabama team was nutty. Everyone else got waylaid by them. And after that, you flirt with the NFL. To me, it just felt like, well, we just got over the hump. We're now finally here. We're now finally settled in. And now you want to go. Now that he's doing it again, I wouldn't be surprised at all if a group of Michigan players have said this right here. That doesn't surprise me. Your thoughts, Drew?
No, absolutely. I think as a player, first of all, you want a coach that's committed, that you want a coach that's going to do what he said he's going to do after he signed an extension, all that stuff. And I understand things happen, but you can't keep, throwing that out there and then coming right back when you don't like the answer to a question or whatever the case is. And it's that old saying, is the grass greener? Until you go out there and find out, you never know. So for him, he's just got to make a decision one way or another. Is he in at Michigan? Is he in here for the long haul? He said he was the last, couple weeks ago or whatever it is after this last or whatever, however long it was, a couple days ago, after all this, talk with Denver or whatever it is, or, and then it could very well happen because let's just be honest, NFL teams, you're going to see a bunch of them get fired tomorrow on Black Monday or whatever they call it in the NFL, where you start seeing GMs, all kinds of people. So that's a very, very, valid question to ask your head coach. And I don't think it's out of bounds at all for some of these players to say, hey, coach, are you in or out? Because you always ask us, are we in or are we out? So, hey, we're going to hold you to the same standard that you hold us to. And that's not being disrespectful. That's not
fair.
Being, it's a fair question. Hey, if you got an open door policy or whatever the case is, that's an open door question. That's one of those things that needs to be asked. And I think you're seeing that at Oklahoma State. You're seeing that other places where I don't know if they're too happy with what they got at, with their head coach and stuff like that. And so you have to ask, coach, are you in or are you out? Same thing with Jerry said something about Lane Kiffin earlier. I don't think he's quite as equal to Harbaugh, but he dealt with the same thing after the Egg Bowl. And is he going to Auburn? Is he not? Is it, all these coaches have easier roads to move and transfer and take other jobs. And a lot of times players are just left with the remnants. So I think these are very, very educated, smart questions that players are absolutely allowed to ask.
Well, perfect timing too, because we just are joined by Jay of Unfair Sports.
Himself
is in Las Vegas, granting us with his time. And Jay, we're right about to jump into TCU's defense against Georgia's offense. Really interested in this because we saw that 3-3-5 do a lot more of efficient work against the Michigan power rush attack. Now, one thing I've said multiple times on this stream, Michigan was still able to score. Yes. So it's not like TCU's defense stopped them from scoring. What TCU's defense did is took them out of what they did comfortably and made them score a different way.
Yeah.
My issue is this, though, Jay, and I'm interested in hearing your opinion. Georgia's too balanced. Georgia doesn't have to rely on the power run. We just saw them go win a shootout against Ohio State. So what are you thinking about this TCU defense? Because they've got some pieces that are fantastic football players, but this is a bit of a different beast they're going up against.
Yeah, I think defensively, can y'all hear me good? I just want to make sure that I'm solid. Perfect. Honestly, I think with TCU's defense, they have a very good opportunity of making things just tough for Georgia. Now, do I think they can stop them? I don't know, but they have gone up against some prolific offenses, and Georgia hasn't shown the ability to be that prolific all the time, like consistently. Now, in this last game against Ohio State, we've all, in theory, dogged Ohio State's defense overall. We felt like Jim Knowles has not done as good as he should have done at this job in the first year with the talent that they have, while at the same time recognizing that, depending on the offenses you're going against, it's going to be tough. And Georgia against Ohio State they both went against very, very, very talented offenses, and Georgia was able to keep up with the Ohio State offense. And so, to kind of answer your question overall, I do think TCU's defense, which has been battle tested with air raid offenses throughout the Big 12 all season, would be just fine against a Georgia defense. I think they will be more competitive on that side of the ball than they will on offense.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Drew, you were talking about the linebacker matchup you were so interested in watching. Talk to us about that, because that's going to be key in this 3-3-5 for TCU.
D. Winters, man, he's something serious. He is a heck of a player. Yes. And the way he came downhill and created havoc against Michigan and stuff like that, I think he can do the same thing against Georgia, because, I mean, everybody's asking the question, how good was the Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line, at Michigan versus an SEC proven offensive line in Georgia? We're about to find out. And so that's going to be the matchup. Can these linebackers still flow free and make plays in the backfield and read keys and all this other stuff? That's going to be a big, big thing. And them matched up against those linebackers or against the tight ends of Georgia, maybe both, maybe one, but Brock Bowers is still a tall task, even if Washington's not in the game. But it makes it a little bit easier when you only have to, track on one instead of, the LeBron James twin out there in Washington,
6'7",
just unbelievable athlete. And so it'll be interesting to see how that matchup, takes out. Can they, take backs out of the backfield, stuff like that. It's going to be interesting. And that's one of I think the matchups that I want to look at early in the game is, how well are these linebackers going to fit against that Georgia front.
And they have to, right? One of the things we know about this 3-3-5 is if you're going to play a team like Georgia, they're going to blitz.
Yep.
And they're going to blitz a lot.
Well, and that's the same thing as we were saying about Georgia is you've got to make TCU one-dimensional. TCU's got to do the same thing against Georgia. If they can, stuff the run and create Georgia, because Georgia's been so good and Tom Monken has been so good at that balanced attack all year, is, can they somehow make Georgia, one-dimensional, and Stetson Bennett, can they put him, in some stressful situations? Can they get him to the ground, stuff like that? I mean, it's on the flip side as well too for TCU. They've got to go in and take away something from Georgia's offense.
Yeah.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Yeah, TCU's going to have to. They're going to want, because honestly, that's why my feeling with this game is that's going to be really defensive more than anything, because Georgia's defense is so ridiculously good, and TCU has a upper class, seasoned defense that's a lot better than people recognize. I mean, this is Gary Patterson, guys, and Gary Patterson is infamous for having top 50 at least defenses in the country. And so because this is still Gary Patterson built with a bunch of transfers added in for Sonny Dykes and his squad, they're not something to be trifled with. I don't want to discount their ability against Georgia. I think everybody is pointing out that Georgia's probably going to shut down their offense, but that doesn't mean that TCU's defense won't do the same. So it could be a heavy defensive battle that we got to prepare for.
Yeah, and they've got to do the same thing they did against Michigan, create turnovers.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and if you can do that, that's where Georgia has struggled a little bit.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a luck stat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you know how to create them and know where to be to create certain ones, you have great opportunity to get interceptions, punching out fumbles just because of holding the guy up, just having that awareness.
As we've seen in the past, some of these national championship games and some of these big games have come down to one of those key big plays, whether it be a long bomb or a touchdown or a broken coverage or a turnover, a sack, something like that. That's an immediate game changer. I think TCU is going to have some of those kind of type of plays on defense to have a shot because and they've got to be able to go down and score touchdowns and can't kick field goals like Ohio State did, because I think that's what allowed Georgia to hang around was Ohio State's inability to
no doubt.
Field goals are not a winning recipe against Georgia. If you play Georgia, I said this earlier.
Like I said earlier, Georgia wasn't at their best and was still able to win that game.
If you play Georgia, you've got to take the head off the snake if it presents itself.
Yep.
You've got to end it quick, and you have to keep your foot on the gas. I don't care if you go up by 14 points. Theoretically, if TCU goes out there, shocks the world, they're up by 14 in the first quarter, you better keep your foot firmly on the gas.
That's something they did a great job of against Michigan. Every time Michigan would punch back, TCU would go down and score. And, you know, I'm not saying that Michigan has a good defense as comparison to Georgia, but you know they were able to do that. Can they do it against Georgia? I mean, we'll see.
And that's the thing is that even though Michigan does have a good defense and blood guns, what's going on? We're doing well. Thank you for pulling up. Make it like, subscribe, babe, bell notification, all that jazz. But on TCU, when it comes to Michigan in that game, like I said, they were counterpunching nonstop, and Michigan's defense is solid, but TCU's offense is way underrated. I think that's the one thing that we're kind of overlooking, the seasonedness of this offense and their ability to do the right things fundamentally. I think that's where the undervalue goes on TCU is they're more fundamentally sound offensively than we're giving them credit for. They're not uberly talented at that position, running back or wide receiver, but they're sound with the way they execute. They execute, and that's what's important. Georgia defensively is probably one of the more fundamentally sound defenses we've ever seen. They're usually on point until they go against a high prolific offense, which Ohio State showed us. Fundamentally sound route runners, blockers. You can break that defense a little bit more than they like. And if TCU walks out there with that same mindset in preparation, they're going to have to get rid of that ball pretty quick. They're going to have 7-second plays. They're going to have the traditional 3 with the Max Duggan scrambling because of them big defensive linemen. If they're prepared for that, they have a chance of keeping the game at least close, if not potentially winning.
So here's where I don't think you're wrong, but I'm going to disagree a little bit with you, and then I'm going to disagree a little bit with Savage in the chat. Here's where you're 100% right. This TCU offense, I do think, is a lot better than people give it credit for. I even think I probably put a little bit more stock in the wide receiver room than even you do. I think they have a very talented wide receiver room. I think they have a wide receiver room that can test the Georgia secondary. But when I look at TCU, I just think they have some speed guys. Quentin Johnson's 6'4". He's going to be a first-round guy. And that's not a knock on Georgia's secondary. I just know that Kirby Smart asks them to play a lot of man coverage. Any secondary that's asked to play a lot of man coverage, I mean, every second that goes on, I mean, your percentages of winning that battle exponentially decrease.
And that's why I mentioned the time of the play. It's going to be 3 seconds. You're not going to get a lot of 7-second plays.
7 seconds.
And if you get 7-second plays, you will eat the defense up because corners cannot hold for that long, no matter what level you're at.
And that's the point that Ty brought up earlier, is you're going to have to ask your corners to do it a lot when trying to run around on a scramble drill. Jay is drinking that Kirby Smart water.
Yeah, so I do think that there's a way for TCU's offense to test this Georgia secondary. I do. And I think here's the thing also. Duggan is willing to take a shot. And it's just like and here's the thing. I almost feel like I can personally speak on this because Kirby came from Alabama and the defenses are so similar. How do you beat Bama's defense? Jay, you root for Tennessee. What did y'all do? You have no fear and we test you vertically. What do we have to lose? We got to test you. We can't play your brand of football. You're too talented. So we have to test you. Yeah.
Well,
So we got to go out there and do it.
He doesn't care about throwing interceptions.
No. So and
let it ride.
But here's where I do disagree a little bit. And I'm not saying y'all won't, Savage, but you say Georgia will rush for 200 plus. Here's what I will say, man. Michigan is the number 5 team in the nation at rushing, and they had their power rushing attack pretty much well shut down. Yep. Georgia is not a top 20 team in rushing football. So I think they might have a bit more success hampering your rush attack than you think. But this is where I disagree with you, Jay. I think this Georgia offense is so balanced. I don't know that it matters if TCU hampers their rushing attack. I don't think it matters. And that's, Savage, to your point. I don't think you need to rush for 200 plus. Yeah. I just think your offense and Todd Monken, what they've done, it's so balanced. We've watched Georgia win in strangulation football, classic SEC ball. I'm talking 2008, 2009, bore you to sleep SEC football. I love it, right? We call it joyless murder ball over here. But then we've also seen Georgia go in a shootout with Ohio State. So I just look at it and I'm like, this offense is so balanced. Yes, I think TCU's defense is more impressive than we give it credit for in terms of bend but don't break. Yeah. But I just look at this Georgia offense, and I think the same argument you made for TCU, I can make for Georgia, and that we don't give this Georgia offense enough credit.
And you're fair on that. But I do think TCU's defense is a little bit better than Ohio State's, and it's only because of experience. I think that with all
there certainly is no arguing against the experience they have.
Right. Their season. That is a super senior built defense with transfers that's perfect. And it's the way you want, And Duggan has a way of just he's got that heart of a lion. I mean, he's got that heart of a champion. We talk about it, the heart surgery he had, and all the stuff he's done.
Unbelievable.
He's the story, the American dream, and overcoming. He's that, and so I think he's gonna do it. He's gonna throw some ugly passes, Hank. You're 100% right, but I think he's gonna bust his butt to get to that point. Yeah. But I think it's the TCU's defense that we're really, really underestimating. Now, Georgia's offense is good, but like you mentioned, Ty, you said it perfectly. They shut down a top 5 run offense by forcing them to beat them. They forced J.J. McCarthy to beat them. They made a decision. This is our executive decision here. Business decision is that we lose to J.J. McCarthy, period.
Here's one thing I will say, though. I think it's easier to shut down a Michigan power rushing offense when you're not as worried about J.J. McCarthy. Like, you're literally telling J.J. McCarthy, beat us, because we have faith if we can stop your rush, you won't beat us. I don't think you can say that to Stetson.
I think it's different, though. I think it's more of a don't let Stetson Bennett beat us. Force them to run more and clog the run.
Yeah.
It's kind of like for example, and we talked about this, and Drew, I'll let you go. I'm sorry for jumping in there, but I wanted to point this out. It's kind of like how we talked about the Alabama-Cincinnati game last year. Cincinnati said, the only way you're going to beat us is running. And Georgia and Alabama said, okay, because that's what we do. Saban has always built a power run offense. No matter what the offense does, it's still power run in some capacity. He wants the option. He'd rather have it. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And that's been his mentality. And the running backs he's gotten, the linemen, it's always looked like Alabama's going to be able to run it down your throat. But then they just beat you with the pass because it's more modern. It's a little bit easier. But Cincinnati, they recognize it. It's like, no, we're just running with Brian Robinson Jr. down your throat. And I think that's similar to what TCU is going to have to force Georgia to do. But I don't know if Georgia's running backs are going to be able to run through them because of their ability to stop Michigan. I think they'll be prepared for that. They're going to want Stetson Bennett to run the ball. They want that offense to be a run offense, and Stetson not like passing it. They want that to be uncomfortable. The only question I've ever had with TCU on that is, can their defensive line make that happen? If their defensive line can make it happen, then at that point, Stetson's going to not want to throw it into man coverage that's really good and with pressure. That leads to turnovers. That's interceptions. That's tipped passes. You don't want to do that. If they can get him to not want to throw the ball and then they suck at running, TCU's got a chance. It's a very tall task. I'm not saying that it's 100% guaranteed, but I think it's possible if they focus.
Yeah.
That's fair.
No doubt.
True.
Let me ask you this. What was Kansas State's recipe for beating TCU in the Big 12 championship, Jay?
That was a lot of quarterback movement, wasn't it?
Quarterback, and then they were able to stress it vertically.
Yeah,
he was able to hit some passes down. Yes. And then when Deuce Vaughn had that one big run, Kansas State's defense was able to shut them down and not create big plays and force Max Duggan into a passing game. I think Georgia's going to be able to do the same thing, especially if Miller's not playing.
Yeah. And that's the big one. We talked about this earlier.
That's going to be huge, is if Georgia can make TCU one-dimensional and pin their ears back and just go after Max Duggan, it's going to be a long night for him. And you're going to see him exhausted and frustrated, just like you saw him against Kansas State in that Big 12 championship, where he lays it out on the line, but you can tell he's got nothing left because he's been running around. And I think Georgia's a much better defense than Kansas State, and so they're going to pull that film up as well and watch some of that as well too. So it's going to be hard for TCU to to be balanced. I think it's going to be tough, but if they can somehow find a running game and to keep Georgia honest, and to keep their heat off of Max Duggan, I mean, I don't know, but I think it's a tall task for TCU. And like Savage Dog just said, and what I said on my live show earlier, experience in these huge games is big for Georgia, and they've been there.
Yeah.
I mean, and I get that. I think the one thing to add to that though is, and this is why I'm talking about why TCU can compete more so than I am Georgia, because we know Georgia's not. It's more of it's a definitive in our eyes. Sure. Georgia's going to do this. This is what Georgia's going to do. So we of course know what they can do to win this game. The question is, can TCU overcome some of themselves to be able to do that, do their side? And I know, and I don't want Savage or anything to think that I don't think Georgia has a chance. I'm trying to find ways for TCU to win, but I'm looking at multiple angles because Georgia is like I said, they're fundamentally sound on defense. It's poetry in motion. They know where to be. They're always there, and then they hit. Like it's even in the struggles they had with Ohio State. Honestly, a lot of it wasn't them being out of place. It was just those receivers. If you give too much time, you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. And CJ Stroud,
right?
Great quarterback.
Yeah, quarterback can make because that was how Ohio State kept that game going.
Yep. Well,
they made it into 5 and 6 second plays and less 2-second plays.
Yep. And you also have Max Duggan, who I would say is a better runner and more fit for quarterback running than CJ Stroud.
He's more willing to run. Yep. He's more willing to run. And I think that's dangerous for Georgia because Max will tuck
definitely
and go.
Is a factor. And that's why I think
he will tuck and go.
But Georgia, he don't care. This is his last college football game.
I mean, at this point, may as well. But he's fundamentally sound.
Yep. And they cannot turn the ball over. TCU's offense. It's an old added saying. It's cliche, but they can't make any mistakes.
Yeah,
no Savage is right. Because I loved watching them play all season. It was just after watching the OU game, I was like, there's something different about this team. And I started watching their games. I'm just like, this is a different. Sonny Dykes, the seasonedness of being a head coach at multiple places from the West Coast into SMU and everything, and having success and failure, he knew what to do walking into this job. Gary knew how to recruit defense. I'm going to add me some offensive transfers, and we're going to build this bad boy. I'm going to focus on my side and leave the rest alone.
Yeah, no doubt. R1 says, Ty, do you think Bama should have made the playoffs? I don't think so. I think they got it right. And here's the thing, R1, I'm a proponent of the 4-team playoffs. I don't think that we need to expand the college football playoffs because I think this is a great year for people like me to argue for the 4-team. If we expand the playoffs, all of a sudden Bama just dismantled the team that beat TCU. They ripped them limb from limb off of 2 quarters of work. Because in the first quarter, Kansas State was winning. The second quarter, Alabama showed up. The third quarter, Alabama showed up. The fourth quarter, Bryce Young was out of the game. So I don't think that in a 12-team format, you want to put that Bama team who's just now getting hot into the college football playoffs. But no, they didn't deserve to be in the playoffs because one of the reasons we love college football more is that the regular season matters. Every single game matters. Bama had all the opportunity in the world. They had all the opportunity in the world to go and win those games, and they didn't. So they didn't deserve to be in. Muted yourself, Jay.
Yeah, I just know I'm on mute. I think the element of the expansion adds to the regular season matters. Like, you got to win your conference if you want to guarantee it. And I think that helps. But I get you. I get you on all of that, and with Bama not making it, it made sense. They lost too many games, and like you said, they did dismantle the team that beat TCU. But we've seen on any given Saturday, in a weird way, a team will dismantle a team that shouldn't get dismantled. Like, for example, Tennessee getting demolished by South Carolina. Where the hell did that come from? It happens. It is just, you look up and the world poofs. So, and I agree with Savage there. I totally would probably prefer, but Texas has money. I hate that they have money.
Yeah. So let's get to the point, right? We need to pick our winners. We need to pick our losers. Give our score prediction. R1, who do I think will be the quarterback one? It depends on the offensive coordinator. It depends. Once I have that answer, I'll give you my prediction.
I mean, I'll give you the answer, Ty. It's Bill O'Brien, man. Come on, quit.
Oh, no.
Come on, Bob. Bob, baby.
No.
Come on. Just grin and bear. Go.
Nay.
Everybody jump in the comments and make sure you remind Ty that Bill O'Brien will be offensive coordinator.
Yes, he will not. He will not.
Let's terrorize him, guys. Let's troll him a little
please,
bit.
Dear Lord, for
Bill
everything
O'Brien
holy.
For governor of Alabama.
Oh, God. Actually, yeah. You know what? No. Let that happen because then he'll have no. He can't do both.
It's just a figure position.
He couldn't even call an offensive game plan that was competent. He can't do both.
I knew we were going to get there.
He couldn't do both.
Kansas State, 5 more years, Hank. That'll right. There you go.
5 more years. No.
Yep.
No, God, no. Let's not do that.
But hey, you'll have continuity. Offensive coordinator and then your defensive coordinator staying too. So awesome.
Yeah. Sure. No, absolutely not. But let's talk about this game. Who do we think wins? Who do we think loses? I'm going to pick the same score I did from your podcast, Drew. We just got off of. I picked Georgia to win this game 35-24. I think it's going to be much better than people think. I think TCU is going to make this a really tough game. I think TCU offensively is going to exit this game, and we're all going to sit here and be like, wow, they were fantastic. They tested this Georgia defense. Here's the problem. How many 5 stars does Georgia have? How many blue chip 4 stars does Georgia have? They are so talented that their second and third string guys, I mean, they're still blue chips. They are still top 300 guys. TCU is an incredible team. Sonny Dykes is an incredible head coach, and they have had an incredible season. I think, Jay, I agree with everything you said. Defensively, I think they're better than people give them credit for. I think offensively, they're dangerous. I think that wide receiver room is super dangerous. But if they are missing Kendre Miller, they are missing 1,400 yards out the backfield. 1,400 yards. Savage answered the question. Georgia has 15 5 stars. TCU has 1. And they should have 2 if Zach Evans hadn't have transferred out.
And you gotta kind of calculate the 4 stars too. But yeah, fair point.
Yeah. I'm going to pick Georgia to win this game. I think in the fourth quarter is when they're going to separate and really put their stamp, and it'll be the depth that is the biggest factor here. But I do believe up until then, TCU is going to show the world that sleeping on them was a bad idea and that they are a great college football team. I'm actually not sure who TCU's 5-star is.
I got to look it up. I'm going to look now.
An injured linebacker? That would make sense because I know whenever Zach Evans had committed to TCU out of high school, he was the first 5-star TCU had ever grabbed out of high school, was Zach Evans. So, yeah, that's my prediction. I would love, if you ask me who I want to win, I want TCU to win this game. I want TCU to win. Georgia's Georgia, right? It's the Death Star. It's the Sith. It's Darth Vader. That's what I think of when I think of Georgia. I think Vader wins this one. Drew, what about you?
The Death Star got blown up.
It did, but I think they've learned that you cannot have. So we have this impenetrable defensive fort with a giant hole.
With that being said, though, I'm with you. Who do I want to win? I would love to see TCU win. I think it would be awesome. I think it'd be great for college football. But like I said on my show earlier, I think Georgia is ready for the moment. I think they've been in the moment. They've been in these big games. They have the depth. They have the balance. I don't think Miller is going to be a factor, even if he plays. I think it's a lot like, the scenario that Oklahoma had with Marquise Brown a couple years ago against Alabama. think if he does play, if he does show up, he's not going to be 100%, and they need him to be 100% to have a shot. I like Georgia 45-27. I think I said that in my show. I just think that Georgia is going to be more physical and impose their will late in the second half and continue to, like I said earlier, that one key is if TCU's hanging around at halftime, the longer they hang around, the more they continue to get momentum. So Georgia's going to have to come out with that mentality of, hey, we're going to show them who the real Georgia Bulldogs are. And, I think that'll happen. And Georgia's going to win their second straight national championship.
Yeah, I think so. Jay, what are you thinking, man?
I mean, y'all are very generous with the TCU recruiting getting better thing. I'm not going to act and pretend like that's true. It's coaching. They're coaching the players up. And at a certain point, that's going to hit their limits. And I do agree. I think it's this game. I think TCU covers the spread. I think it's 35-24 tie. It's a very fair number. I was thinking more closer to 35-31, but as I think about it, TCU covers the 12-point spread by only losing by 11 points. And the game is closer than expected. I think Georgia gets a turnover at the end. It leads to a touchdown or something silly.
That's exactly what I said, ironically. Exactly.
To separate the game. That's perfect. That sounds poetic to a game where the first half is going to be electric, but then the second half, talent's going to take over coaching. It's like we're just too talented, and you just can't overcome that hump. Now, there is a great chance for Davis slaying the Goliath in this game. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend like TCU's just guaranteed to lose. There is a chance for a Davis versus Goliath, but I just don't see it this year. I'm going Georgia 35-24.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely going to be rooting for TCU, but
100%.
If it's prediction time, I go with the experience and Kirby.
I gotta go logically in this situation. Yep. I normally, if I wanted to go with my heart, I would have gave TCU.
That's what I did last game.
35-31
and it paid off for me last game. So
right, but logic is more important.
I picked TCU to beat Michigan. So there, I gave you one upset for the playoffs.
So, that is true.
You did.
It's true.
I'm never wrong.
Only one.
Never wrong.
Well,
even when I'm right, I'm never wrong.
Well, guys,
when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Though.
True. Well, before we get out of here, I did want to give both of you an opportunity. Oklahoma just picked up a big addition out the transfer portal. We were talking about him earlier. Rondell. He had 6 sacks this year, 8 sacks last year. Really good guy off the edge. Really intriguing. Before we get out of here, I just want to give you thoughts on that addition.
Yeah.
Thank you, R1.
Another great addition to the defensive line. I mean, that's something we need. Experience too. The guy has, like, we were going over his stats earlier before we jumped on live, Ty, and another good pickup. Another guy who's played some high quality football and could be a great addition to Oklahoma's defensive line. So great get for the Sooners.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay, your thoughts?
I think it's a big, huge addition, just adding some growth to the position that we felt like we needed help the most. And I was talking to a buddy about this today, and one thing that I've recognized, and I harp and preach on my channel about this class and the players that are being brought in, is that Brent Venables is focusing on the biggest problem we've had in Oklahoma for the last 8 years. Defense.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so he's focused heavily on that. Like, I mean, I know that some of us we need wide receivers and some additional pieces, blah, blah, blah. But that staff is like, we're going to get skills guys. We've got the history of putting them in the league. We've got a reputation as a staff because a lot of the staff is still there. Your DeMarco Murray's is still there, who's helped with that, And so because of that, we're going to just focus on getting the guys on the defensive side, using our reputation to make this defense look like it used to in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And by doing that, that tells me that this is a winning formula for a team that only problem has always been, we can't stop nobody. And so adding a seasoned defensive player while you're grooming these first 2 classes of Brent Venables' era, it's like the perfect formula to making sure that you don't fail too much.
Yeah, Sean, we got the frogs versus the dogs.
Frogs and dogs, baby.
Frogs versus the dogs. What a poetic
start to 2023. Dog's going to eat that frog.
I always root for David over Goliath, but there's a good chance that Frog gets eaten by the Bulldogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hey, at least we get some mascots. I wonder if TCU should bring a little frog.
Well,
that would be weird.
Georgia is not bringing their mascot. What I heard.
I know, that's so weird.
Yeah.
Uga isn't going.
No, Uga.
Too far.
Uga isn't going. Is it Uga? Uga's not going. Damn, that sucks. Yeah. He's getting old though. That one's an old Uga. We're about time for a replacement.
Let's not put that evil on Georgia Ripe. Jay.
Jay.
I'm saying they retired.
Goodness gracious, Jay.
They retire them. They're not flying. Obviously, they're at that age.
What do you want to send him to the farm?
And they bring a young one. Yeah,
you want to send him to the farm?
Hey, go on lay on that front porch.
Don't say sheep.
God's mercy. Jeez. We're trying to have
the whole game, guys.
We're trying to have a family show. God bless.
This is a wholesome family podcast.
The dog is asleep game long.
Let him sleep.
But that's what I'm saying. He's trying to retire. He ain't trying to be excited and bark touchdowns.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, let's. I apologize.
Travis, you know it's time to get a younger buck in there. It'll be okay. Uga's gonna go out to just have fun.
This is discriminatory. This is ageism.
We're not ageist.
This is ageism.
You're not barking at touchdowns. It's time to go.
This is the Pat McAfee show. What's going on here?
This is ageism at its finest.
Man.
What? Preposterous.
You're gonna get me canceled for your ageism. Mm-hmm. All right, boys, we're about to hop out of here. It's been a great time. There's NFL going. I want to let people go watch the NFL games. R1, you asked if I'm going to be live after the game. No, probably not. We're going to have some people over here enjoy the game, cook out, kind of just enjoy the last college football game of the year. I will be live Tuesday, 5:30, though, probably with these two gentlemen right here talking about the game. Can't wait to see you there. But, guys, before we get out of here, Drew, Jay, where can everybody find all of y'all's great content? Drew, I'll start with you.
Yes, sir. We are the Under Official Review podcast. Me and my buddy Zach Merrill. He's a Ohio State Buckeye fan. He's still, we got him on the podcast tonight, but he's still a little sore. But we talk all things college football. We love to do it. We have now partnered with the Fanboys and the Winning Edge Sports Network. A lot of great things coming in the future for us. But please go over, like, subscribe, everything to keep supporting us. We need followers. So please go over, click us on YouTube. We got our YouTube channel, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. We have these guys on quite a bit as well. So come on over, and we love talking college football.
Yeah, you'll see us all over the place as a family. We're a big family on this and whatnot.
The collective.
The collective, basically, yes. So Jay Unfair Sports, you can find me wherever podcasts download, listen to, as well as YouTube. I drop a lot of updates around OU football. I've been talking more Colorado as well as just college football in general. If it's an interesting story, I'm probably going to cover it. So, yeah, come join me when I go live more often. You'll see these gentlemen as well, the big family of collective we have. You'll see a whole bunch of diverse ideas, thoughts, and analysis. So, Ty, love jumping on. Glad I was able to make it. I was rusty.
How is Dak Prescott 50%? He's 14 of 37 for 128 yards, an average of 3.5 yards per attempt.
Need to ask for some money back.
My God.
He is stealing from them.
I'm proud of him. Wow. And they're getting blown out.
Cooper Rush is within 10 points of Dak's rating, and he hasn't had a completion.
This is beautiful.
He's 0 for 1, and he's within 10 points. My God. Hey, Alexis, how are you?
Hey, Alexis. They're in DC, so I don't know. They just,
man.
It's funny how little how you have a issue with stock when it comes to quarterbacks that are actually capable of playing in the NFL.
There's a shortage.
Inventory issues that you got to pay Dak Prescott all this money. Yeah. I mean, and he's a good quarterback. It's just it doesn't last.
The difference between good quarterbacks and transcendent quarterbacks, there's how many? There's a handful.
The Grand Canyon.
Yeah, we got 2-3 transcendent quarterbacks. We got a lot of good quarterbacks.
That's what I mean. It's like it's so hard to find a quarterback that could even start for the top 15 teams in the league. It's there's just not enough. The defenses are so sophisticated. The concepts of blitzing are so sophisticated that no matter what quarterback you have to have a transcendent one that can process it. I mean,
I can only think of I can think maybe I'm missing a couple, but There's three that I would really,
Mahomes, Allen,
Burrow, and Allen.
Burrow, yeah.
Burrow's probably the newest one.
Yep.
To me, I think Allen. Yeah, of course, you got Mahomes and Allen. I think Herbert has a great chance.
Herbert he could be in that conversation, certainly. Yeah.
Tua when healthy has it.
I love Tua, man. I don't know if I can give that to Tua. I love Tua. I think he's a great quarterback, but I don't know that he's transcendent.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I think Lamar is more transcendent than him.
I love Tua. I got the jersey in there and everything. I got the Miami Tagovailoa jersey. You already know.
I think he's good. I think he's a top 15 quarterback. Let's put it like that.
I think so.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
But that's your problem is that even with the issues we know he has, finding top 15 is you've got it easily. And the rest are just quarterbacks in the NFL.
Hot take. I already know what you're looking at.
I was about to say no name. I'm not ready to do that yet. But he says
way more. He says way more accurate.
And now I will give you that.
That's
fair.
That is fair. That's a fair assumption.
The one thing that I give Josh Allen a little more stock on is the fact that he recognized he sucked at accuracy and got help. Like, to suppress your ego at that level is the most impressive thing I've ever seen. Because traditionally, somebody walks in there and you say that they have passing issues. Please, it got me here, so I'm going to go ahead and keep doing what I do and make it happen. Josh Allen suppressed that and said, hey, man, I suck at this. Can somebody help me? And he did nothing but apply it and got better. I like hurting Bill's feelings by telling them that, no, the first 2 years of his career do count, and you can see how awful he was, but you can see that he was a man and changed his game to get better. So I can commend him for getting better, but I also can ridicule the first couple years when y'all really told us that he was the second coming.
True. Well, we will be here Tuesday evening to break down the game. I'm sure all of us will have a ton of content between now and then. But until then, we'll see y'all. And be sure to enjoy your evening with your family and enjoy the national championship. See you.
Enjoy it. Peace.
Spinning wheel.